Yeah, that was a very good note to end on. What a brilliant panel. I mean, it's a great way to end the day, but I didn't probably do it on purpose to put it on last, just in case you're wondering that. I wanted to obviously, get the scheduling for the right people to be on the panel, so it just worked out that way. But it was really good because I love that word pilot purgatory. It's really quite a menacing word actually when you think about it. But it was really good, and I think I like the. Obviously, David, who I'm going to speak to in a minute, but on sort of diversity, how diversity is a key to success and how the people need to buy into it. I think there's still this real issue within energy, and I'll sort of do an energy, in quotes, explanation, because I think within this field, there's still that real desire to put technology above people. And I think that's slowly changing, but it's ever so slowly changing. It is about people, and people need to buy into what this technology is, and that's sort of what change management is about. So I also think, I don't know if it's right or wrong, and David will probably put me right, listening to all of these today, I just feel that the industry should have digitized earlier. I don't know why they've left it so late, because it was available. I think with oil and gas, IoT, machine learning, it was around for ages, and I just feel they've put it to the side because industries make money. They don't want to. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And I think it's become a cycle, and it's sort of left to the last minute. And I feel as though the utility side, especially, is sort of chasing its tail now, because so many panels today have highlighted how are people going to do this in the next 10 years or 12 years. So it's a concern, but it's a point of discussion. David, thank you for joining me on the end of sort of comments. I loved you on this panel as well as usual. How do you think, how has digital innovation progressed over the last few years? Have you seen greater acceptance and scaling up, or, has more value been captured, do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm optimistic about that. I guess I've seen a lot of this happen over the last 10 years, especially, where it started with people in the field, manual recording of analog data and everything. And people started learning about having, what technologies were available. And a lot of the work done earlier was getting some of that, that could then be applied to facilities. It was easier in new build facilities, a little bit harder in brownfield facilities, but technology started being introducing IoT devices, safety and control systems got a little more sophisticated, and some of this data could piggyback on that. So over the 10 years, we've seen a lot more providers of this technologies grow and grow and grow. Each conference, each show you go to is more and more people supplying this kind of stuff. You see more projects hearing about it, case studies, pilots, more and more and more. And so it moved from the people in an analog world to introducing technology to them. And now the last few years, it's recognizing, okay, it's not just about technology. It's not a shiny, pretty thing you bolt on the wall and everything's all taken care of. You have to work on the culture. And so we have heard that more the last few years, which is very encouraging. That people are, sometimes we're hearing that because they didn't pay attention to it and it failed. And why did our pilot fail? We had this great technology. Well, because you didn't change the way you made decisions or the composition of your teams. So people have learned from that. We humans learn the hard way sometimes. So we started with people. Now we're at a point where we recognize and we have the technology. It's really good. It can capture a lot of value. People understand we have to work on the culture. So I think digital innovation has been on a good path there, and really leaping from traditional oil and gas into renewables. They're sort of taking this for granted. They're being a fast follower. Whether it's a solar farm or a wind farm or a geothermal facility, they're starting out with IoT devices. They're starting out with better communications. They're putting stuff into the cloud, advanced analytics. So it's been a great transition.
I think it's interesting because there's so many similarities between the energy, the utility side of oil and gas. I mean, one of the reasons I had Ben also moderating this, and also your experience as well, it's good to have that type of person who's in that field with people who are working on the utility side, like Susan, and obviously like Philippe as well. So it's interesting how there's a similarity in problem, and they're looking for the same solutions. That being said, energy transition, you've got the digital side, but then now you've got the energy transition side. So you've got energy transition, decarbonisation, sustainability. Now, these are the key challenges for future energy systems. We all know that. We've discussed this all day. Everyone's talked about it in different ways. It's been fascinating to get different views. How optimistic should we be about the prospects for meeting all these challenges? Because there's so many barriers to entry at the moment when you talk about renewables. But I like to keep positive. So how do you see the prospects of this?
No, I am positive. We heard great things throughout the day. The first panel started talking about, how's our grids going to cope? Everybody's talking about electrification. Can we do that? Can we produce enough electricity? Can we transmit it? Can we distribute it? How we do this. We've heard about over the course of the day of, well, renewables are great, but we have to have base load on the grid and everything. And then how will those two talk to each other when a renewable is intermittent? The sun's not shining, the wind's not blowing. Okay, what do we do now? We have to have base load. So, well, unfortunately, the world is seeing a lot of that right now. We're seeing increased use of coal, contrary to where people would aspirationally like to be. But we actually have the technologies and tools to deal with this. We have high capacity, long duration energy storage systems. One of the people at one of the presentations today talked about don't waste the energy. So if renewable energies are going to be intermittent, the sun's going to shine in the daytime, except for when the clouds are there or the wind's going to blow. When it is there, capture that energy. Don't let it go to waste. People are talking about sometimes grids curtail wind farms. Well, instead of just shutting down, why don't we make some hydrogen, store that, and we have a high capacity, long duration system. So Shane McArdle at Kongsberg mentioned the technology is here to help people. That's a key thing in everything. Technology is not here to replace people. It's help people do a better job, help sharpen the pencil, help use these renewables more efficient and everything. We heard from the third panel today about carbon capture and storage. It is technically proven. It exists. There's probably over 10,000 carbon-based fuel power plants in the world. I know China has 1,000 coal plants. We should be capturing that. We have the technology. We can mitigate that emission whilst we're waiting for other renewables to scale up. But as those other renewables scale up, we also have recognized that they are intermittent. So where's our future base load going to come from? Is it going to be nuclear? We didn't hear a lot today about nuclear, but there's been some announcements recently of maybe the government in the UK at least is considering small-scale nuclear, which is quite attractive. But we have to have base load. Use renewables as much as you can. They're usually a good price on their own, the solar panels, the wind turbines on their own. But with their intermittency, we have to have base load. So people are thinking about that, talking about that. And your fourth panel today really focused on that overcoming intermittency, dealing with that is a key challenge going forward. And I don't think we have the best answers for that yet, but we have plenty of smart people working on that.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I like the way you've referenced those ones because, I mean, it's an interesting question. What do we do with this intermittency issue? Because we all want it to happen, but it won't happen very quickly. I mean, I think there was I don't know which panel it was. They were talking about how you've got a lack of storage when you can't use these renewables, and that's a huge hindrance. So, but look, David, thank you very much for joining me. No, go on. Sorry, David. Go on. Finish off. Go on.
Multiple countries have slowly but surely recognized this. So the beginning of last year in southern Australia, they realized that they've done really great with rolling out solar and wind. They didn't roll out the large-scale energy systems. So over the past year, tremendous numbers of large-scale energy storage systems have been going in. But other countries have had challenges because how do you pay for that? If an energy storage system is only used in an emergency, well, people produce, it costs too much money, too much capital is invested. How can you pay those people? So countries have had to work out policies and compensation systems. So the UK is going through that challenge right now. How do you pay a guy to spend a bunch of money that you don't use very often? But if you're going to go to net zero and you're going to have a large amount of renewables, you're going to have those systems. while you also look for other forms of baseload like geothermal and nuclear. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's like any insurance, isn't it? You don't want to pay for it until unless sort of when something happens, then you've gone through it. So, David, thank you for joining me, and thank you for being on the panel. As ever, you've been brilliantly insightful. So, I hope to speak to you again soon as well. And thanks for your time.
Thank you, Adam. Cheers.
Cheers. Well, that is a wrap up for today. I've really enjoyed that. I mean, it's interesting going over this with David because David works with me also on some of the oil and gas initiatives we do, covering the same topics. And it's very, very clear that so many challenges that have come from the utility side are sort of very similar to what's happening on the oil and gas side. So some key takeaways for me, I think, for today, just before I leave you, is I think the intermittency of renewables, as someone said before, it does provide an opportunity. I know we all sort of think about the negative side for it, but I think it's an opportunity for us to really develop that side of what we're doing as well. Electrification as well. It was mentioned a few times. I think it's going to be very key for decarbonisation in particular. On the digital adoption, don't let data be a blocker. I think a lot of companies now are seeing over this, but there is this real misconception about data, being a blocker to employ technology. And I think that is, it's good that was discussed today on a couple of panels. I think regular contributions are made on the consumer. I think that must have been mentioned on every single panel on how consumers are running or how they want to be running the policies, how technology interacts with the consumer, how the consumer interacts with the tariffs. And I think that's going to become very significant for utilities going forward, and the role of the consumer is going to be very, very important within this sector as well. There will be obviously a change of consumer habits and how these habits are going to be developed. So it's up to the utilities now to balance that out, and also really the value consumers will add to the system, because these are the ones that are consuming it. And there's a big play now on green tariffs and how you decarbonize the customer. And that's playing a big part of what's going on with the energy cycle at the moment. And last but not least is about diversifying energy and digitalization. It should be seen as creating an economic opportunity, and I think that's a really good point. I think it was mentioned earlier on with Jim McDonald, Professor Sir Jim McDonald, about how technology and decarbonisation should be seen as an opportunity to really enhance your economy. And I think the more companies that see that, the better. And I thought that was a good note to probably leave the event on. Our next event will be Future Oil and Gas. It's going to be held virtually on the 16th and 17th of November. Please contact me if you want any information on this. And also, please give me any feedback on the event today, bad or good. I do like constructive feedback because we always want to make these events better. We want to make them interactive as well. So I hope you enjoyed it. All there is for me left to say is thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate the fact that you've tuned in, and I will hopefully speak to you all soon. Thank you very much.